Hello and welcome, everyone. We are just going to give another minute. There are a lot of people that are coming in from the waiting room, and it's wonderful to see all of you. So thank you for spending your Tuesday lunch with us. We will get started in just 1 minute. So go ahead and get yourself settled. All right, it looks like we have most of the people through the waiting room. So again, welcome for those of you who just joined. We are so excited today to bring to you the fourth in our series of live conversations, which we call Live at the Keyot Café. As you can see, our panelists today all have virtual backgrounds. We wish we were in the actual Keyot Cafe. This is from our brand new beautiful office we opened in March, right before we all went to quarantine mode. And really the concept of this live event is imagine us all sitting around in the Keyot Cafe today, having this conversation around the topic of pivoting your career and just really knowledge sharing and brainstorming with one another. So that is what we hope to bring to you today. Before we get started, I just want to do a few housekeeping reminders. The first thing is everyone should be on mute as they enter from the waiting room, but if for some reason you are not, we just ask that you keep yourself on mute. This will allow you, all the participants, to hear our panelists as they're speaking today to make sure you get everything out of the conversation. The way that we're going to run the event, if anyone is new to our live series, is we will first have our panelists speaking for about the first 25 minutes or so, and then we will open it up to a live Q&A, which is really where the magic happens, and we have the opportunity to make sure that we are providing you the knowledge and information that is so important for you to walk away with today. I want to encourage all of you throughout the whole event today, though, as you think of questions, please start to enter those into the chat feature. We have Keyot's Carly Johnson, who is providing all of our behind the scenes support today. And so Carly will receive all of your questions and she will make sure that we get those to the panelists. So you don't have to wait till Q&A starts. We would love to have those questions start coming in to make sure that we have time to answer all of those. We love audience participation, so if there are thoughts or comments you have, you can also feed those to Carly as well. And then the last thing I will say is this is a live event, and if we were in person, we would all see your wonderful, beautiful faces. So for those of you who are comfortable and who are able to, if you can turn on your video, it really helps the panelists better engage with each of you. And we do feed off a lot off of your body language and energy. So thank you to all of you turning on your video. If you can't the whole time, I understand. All right, let's get into it then. So our topic today that we're bringing to Live at the Keyot Cafe is that your college degree doesn't have to define your career. And this whole idea around making pivots in your career throughout the entirety of your career. The fact that your career is not a linear journey is wonderful and amazing, but you need some help sometimes and a little direction getting there. And so that's what we hope to do today with our panelists and with questions from all of you. So I want to give you a little bit of context and some ideas around why we decided to bring this topic forward. One thing is we went out to our LinkedIn network and we just asked all of you, how many of you today are in a job that connects directly to the field that your college major was? And I was actually super surprised. Some people guessed this right away in our back office, but if you can guess, 16%, only 16% of you are doing something today that connects directly to your major. And our panelists, Laura and Veronica and I, will all share our own journeys in that way. Another interesting industry statistic I thought that gave us some context on why this topic might be important is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So a few years ago, they put out some research about how many times each of us make a change in our career, the number of different jobs. And some of you may know this well, but if you don't, the number of jobs you change over your career 12. Isn't that wild? So just think of that. I thought the important thing to take away from that is we spend more time changing jobs than we probably do actually in jobs. And so that's why this is such an important skill of pivoting to learn and to learn how to do well and to learn ways to be effective with that. So with that, I want to get into some introductions and welcome our panelists today. I'm going to begin with Laura Kelly. For those of you who do not know Laura, she is our co-founder and CEO at Keyot. Laura, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody.
Thank you, Laura. And we're going to be hearing your story very shortly about how you've, your whole career journey. So I look forward to hearing that. Veronica Fritsch is also on our panel. Veronica is our Keyot recruiter for all things analyst, data analyst, business analyst, you name it. Hi, Veronica. Thanks for joining.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here.
So happy to have you here. And then I am going to be your third panelist as well as your facilitator. So I promise not to talk your ear off too much. My name is Molly Starenchuk. I am a senior recruiter here at Keyot. I work with our program and project managers, our agile coaches and scrum masters. And I am so excited to share a little bit of my learnings with you today too. So let's get started. Laura, I'd love to start with you by sharing with the group today a little bit about your own career journey. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. I think I'm probably the poster child for this conversation. I went to school at the University of Iowa and pursued a communication degree, and I wanted to be a writer. My goal was to get in the writer's workshop, and I envisioned when I was 22 that I would be a best-selling author by the time I was 40. And needless to say, that didn't happen. I did get into the writer's workshop, and it was a fantastic experience in really something that I've enjoyed and I've used throughout my entire career, which is expressing through the written word. And my first position, though, I graduated from college in the middle of a recession. And so there weren't a whole host of jobs to choose from. So I ended up joining and became a buyer for a retail organization. So I thought I'd be a writer. I became a professional buyer of stuff that other people were going to buy. And within that career, realized how much analytics came very easily to me. I'd always had great grades in math, but it had never occurred to me that I could pursue something using math skills. Over the course of 6 years in my retail career, I used analytics and statistics to determine how fast consumers would buy merchandise and where could I place that merchandise in order to get them to buy it differently or faster for the price that I intended. And it was right at the forefront of when personal computing was coming into the workplace. And I was fascinated by the technology that was available and the new skills that I could build. And so I went to a community college and got a technology degree. And I wanted to understand more how this technology was working. And shortly after I got that technology degree, I got an opportunity to move to an insurance company to become a technical writer. And it came through a personal connection with somebody that I knew. And I moved to the insurance company and pursued my technical writing, but within a technology environment, and found again that writing and analytics were really important to me. And in that role at that company, I got tapped by the president of the firm to be part of an enterprise-wide process reengineering effort. And I didn't know what any of those words meant. And I jumped at it. I thought it was fantastic and I loved it. And it was led by a senior consultant from a company called Zenger Miller, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was a company that specialized in reengineering. And I fell in love with this concept of going from department to department and determining how they could work together or communicate or process the work through more efficiently using technology. And little did I know that that would end up becoming the bulk of my career, because out of that role, I was recruited to join a consulting company. And at that consulting company, moved into a role that I'd never heard of that was called business analyst. And as a business analyst, I used analytics and I used my writing skills and I used my technology degree and my experience helping different departments work more effectively together and do their business more effectively. And in that company, I stayed for 8 years, and I was a business analyst, and I was a project manager, and I dipped my toe into quality management. And ultimately where I landed and really built a name for myself was in RFPs, of building proposals to do business. So as a consulting company, building that proposal and taking that proposal out to clients. Again, writing, analytics, and starting to see a theme. And ultimately at the end of that journey, I was tapped by an entrepreneur who wanted to open a new company. And I went in as the 5th employee of that new company and helped him build an organization. And I continued with analytics, but at a senior level. So now I was in a regional role, and I was helping others learn how to do what I had done, and ultimately was the top operations person when, with my 2 co-founders, decided to step back and start Keyot. And now I serve as the CEO of Keyot, where I utilize my analytics, my technology background, leadership experience, industry expertise, process reengineering, and my love of writing in what I do every day. And if you would have asked my 22-year-old self if I was going to be the CEO of a company that I owned that was in a technology field enabling customer vision, I would have laughed you off the conversation. So I'm anxious to get into this conversation because I think it's just an awesome topic.
I think so too, Laura, and I think that's interesting how you can go back to really what your passion was. You knew that very well early on when you went to college, but how you've seen that woven throughout your entire career journey. And we'll talk more about that. So thank you for that great introduction. Veronica, no pressure to follow that up, but do you want to share with us a little bit about what your career journey has looked like?
Yes, certainly. So my name is Veronica Fritsch. I'm part of the recruiting team here at Keyot. I certainly did not major in recruiting. I had no idea that recruiting was even a job that existed in college. But I'll share how I got to this position that I truly love. I went to the University of Minnesota, go Gophers. I graduated with degrees in marketing and management information systems. And while I was in school, I chose those areas because it really helped me flex both my creative and analytical muscles. I love problem solving and critical thinking, recognizing patterns, but also loved the creative design and branding aesthetic piece that marketing offered, or so I thought. When I graduated college, I went down a pretty technical path, working as a technical business analyst within an IT department at a large organization in the Twin Cities. And this role really gave me truly stellar foundational skills and exposure to all the things I loved about being a business analyst and all the things that roles that maybe I wasn't so keen on doing for the rest of my life. So after a few years, I really started to think about what I wanted to do long term. And instead of thinking about specific jobs or roles that I wanted to do, I started to think about what am I really good at? So I would just jot down a couple of things of what I liked, what I didn't like, what I noticed really gave me energy at work, what I noticed really was a little bit of an energy suck. I started to connect the dots between what I love to do and started thinking about what I wanted to do long term. And there were a few recurring themes. I love learning. I'm always reading and listening to podcasts and doing informational interviews. That's something I've done my entire life. And now when I was in college, I just learned there was a jargon word for it called informational interview. That's just something I've always loved, a constant learning. Love learning about organizations and the strategies that they're using, the tools they're using to achieve their long-term strategy. So that constant learning was something that I really noticed after doing kind of that self-assessment. And then another thing was communicating with people, whether that's listening or speaking with them, learning about what they love to do at work, outside of work, what drives them, what gives them energy. So fast forward to where I am today in a role much different than my degree would have predicted. I was really able to marry my love for communicating with others and my love for business analysis into a role where I get to talk to people who are in the world of business analysis all day long and really capitalizes on a lot of the areas that I'm truly passionate about. So later we'll talk about, later in this conversation, we'll talk about how we got some tools you could use to get to that point.
Yeah, and Veronica, I think, you know, it's been fun to watch you and the credibility that you have built with candidates in the business analyst, data analyst types of space, because you can relate and say, I have been in your shoes, and you can ask a different kind of question than I may be able to, who has never done that. So anyways, that'll be really fun to hear more about. I want to share a little bit about my journey. I also had a very zig and zag and zig type of career path, but I really love what I do, so I've gotten to where I need to be. My story goes like this. I went to Creighton University down in Omaha, Nebraska, so go Blue Jays. And I went to school there because they had the only PhD program in physical therapy. But I also went there because I did not have to directly join the program, and I was allowed to get an undergrad degree in any major I wanted. So I chose English as my major. I also loved writing. And I just knew I wanted to do work, I think, that would challenge me. So what I knew was that maybe that was going into law school, or I didn't want to go into med school, but something in health sciences. My first pivot, though, came after I studied abroad, and I came home and I called my dad and said, guess what? I'm not going to physical therapy school. I'm going to get my major in creative writing. And not the call you want to make home. Let me just tell you that. So anyways, but the reason I did that is because I did a lot of shadowing in physical therapy. So I did have a good sense of what it involved. And to me, it just wasn't offering the challenge. The work was very routine, which is great in healthcare treatment, but it wasn't the type of work that I found very satisfying. So I made my first pivot, but I had that safety net of a general degree that allowed me some options. And what I knew I wanted to really pursue was one of two avenues, which was either being a college professor and getting into teaching. I come from a whole family of teachers, or going into advertising and copywriting, which I also had this creative side, and I really had an interest in business, though I don't think I probably could have articulated it back then. So I had the fortune to continue at Creighton and get my graduate degree. And during that time, I had two really important opportunities that gave me some great insight to both those paths. One was I was a teaching assistant. So I got to see firsthand, I worked very closely with professors and saw the ins and outs of the academic world, and really came to the conclusion that that wasn't my cup of tea. So I was able to eliminate that from options. And then I also landed a really good internship as a copywriter one summer for a pretty well-known advertising agency. And I loved it. I loved the collaboration of the teams. I loved the creative side. I loved solving business problems, everything about it, and using my writing skills. So when I graduated, it was 2002 with my master's degree. It's technically in Irish literature and creative writing, so it gets even better. As my family says, yeah, I bet you didn't know you could get a master's degree, let alone 2 degrees in creative writing. So that is a little bit of where my journey started. When I graduated and moved up to Minneapolis, and I started to pound the pavement looking for junior copywriter jobs, but 2002 was just after the dot-com bust. So it was a little bit post-recession. If I had graduated in 2000, like my friends, I would have had a signing bonus and just amazing opportunities right out of the gate. And so I was competing with a lot of really good people who maybe had 20 years of incredible work experience supporting accounts like General Mills and Porsche and just all these incredible accounts. I networked. I talked with a lot of people. I wrote, well, back then it was letters, emails or letters to people asking to network, and people were very kind with their time, but there was no work to be had for someone like me. So I did a couple other things. I love to travel. So I was briefly a travel agent during post 9/11, post dot-com bust, and the SARS outbreak. It wasn't exactly the most profitable job. And then I went into work at a major retailer. And the reason that I chose that is I knew it was just a foot in the door in a major company. And I knew if I could get in there, I could figure out a little bit more what I wanted to do and what opportunities were available to me. So very quickly on, I gained some traction there. I ran a small business and turned it around and had a lot of success and fun, looking at numbers and understanding how I could make things better, and honestly just treating customers really well. And I got into a leadership program there, and that is where my career today, I think, really pivoted again, because I was exposed to the different paths in a business and leadership roles, and decided I really had a passion for human resources. From there, I had an opportunity to step into a recruiter role, my first recruiter role, and I loved it. Eventually, I took on HR responsibilities, and I found out I didn't love that. So what I thought I wanted to do, get into more the HR leadership side, I found that wasn't my passion. And so when I 10 years ago came back to recruiting, I just knew that recruiting was really what I love to do. So 10 years later, here I am. I use my communication skills every day. I certainly use those leadership skills. I use the critical thinking skills that I developed in all those jobs, and I'm thrilled where I am. I have a great story to share and relate to people, but it certainly was a journey, not always a fun one, but certainly lessons learned all around. So good. Laura, I'm curious, what advice would you give to your college grad version of yourself about your career journey now, knowing what you know today?
Oh, it's a great question. I would tell the college graduate version of myself to recognize that you will learn as much from a job you don't love as you do to a job that you do love. And when I look back, one of the exercises I like to do when I am involved with our Crew 212 boot camp classes is an exercise called Lifelines, where you go through your journeys, your career journeys, your highs and your lows in your life, both in career and personal, and you circle the peaks and you circle the valleys, and you identify, what did I learn in each of those things? And when you go through that exercise, for me personally, I learned some of my most valuable lessons about what I was good at or what I really enjoyed doing from those valleys, where you're in a job you don't love, where you really find out. And I think if I would have known that coming out of school, that you will learn so much from every situation, even if you're not in the job that you think you're perfect for at this moment. If you keep that open mind about, I wonder what I'm going to learn this year or in this job, I think it would have helped me grow even faster than my journey took me.
Yeah, so incredible. Sometimes we're just so set on the end goal that we miss what's right in front of us. And
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of us take, and Veronica, you talked about really sitting down and doing some self-reflection on what you like to do or what was meaningful for you. For me, I got a lot of my feedback from other people that would say, you know, you're really good at this. Have you thought about pursuing this? Or this is a talent of yours. Have you thought about that? And I think using both of those tools, either reflection yourself or through getting feedback from others, can really help you answer some of those questions.
Veronica, how about for you? What, looking back a few years and taking really your first major career pivot, what advice would you give to yourself at the time of graduation?
Yeah, my answer kind of stems off of what Laura was saying, but really I wish I would have done a little bit more self-reflection and understood, what is my why? Why did I want to truly go into management information systems, and what would that look like long-term for me? You know, you have so many career counselors and mentors and adults telling you, do the networking and do the informational interviews. And I wish I would have, of course I was always doing those things, but I wish I would have realized how important they really are, because in college, you're in this kind of bubble and you romanticize some, I'm going to graduate MIS and I'm going to be a leader of data analytics in a large organization. And you kind of look at everything through rose-colored glasses. And the reality of what I've learned is about the jobs and opportunities out there that align with what I want to do is truly from sitting down with people, asking them, okay, what does it really mean to be a business analyst? What do you love? What do you hate? What's the day-to-day? And when you sit down and and actually come from a place of genuine curiosity with people from all types of roles, it's amazing how much they open up. They are going to share so much. And if you're able to connect the dots between, oh, Laura is now a CEO of a consulting firm, but here's her career path, and I don't know if I want to do that. Maybe it really helps direct your own career compass. So I would say, again, it's not any crazy advice, but really do network, do those informational interviews. Just the action of doing that, it slowly moves you forward into aligning that compass to where you want to go.
Yeah, it goes back to what Laura was saying too, Veronica, about you're going to learn something. You're either going to learn something you like more of and want to do, or you're going to learn that's not what I want to do. And even we talk every day with candidates. Sometimes we ask them to say, describe your ideal job. And sometimes we say that could include telling us what you don't want to do, even if you're really good at it. So those are all really great points.
Molly, I think so many people coming out of school, including myself, put so much pressure on ourselves to get that first job has to be perfect. And I talk to so many, soon to be college graduates who are in a state of panic about, what if I make the wrong decision? What if I don't get that job that I've studied for these last 4 years? What if my first job isn't the one that I know I can do? And I always try to tell them, don't put so much pressure on yourself. This first job is just that. It's your first job, and you're going to learn, and whatever you're good at in this first job are the same things that you're going to be good at in the next job and the next job. But this first job is going to help you define what you want to do and where you want to take your career. Don't make it's not the monstrous decision that you think it is.
Yeah. And there's so much weight, you've, like Veronica was saying, you've had career counselors, you've probably been thinking and talking about this for 6 or 7 or 8 years even. And you have student loans to pay, and there's all this pressure, but you have a whole career ahead of yourself, and you want to do work, as we say at Keyot. One of our core values is love what you do. And I genuinely hope all of you have that experience of finding work you love that you do. I often tell people, think of, and I work a lot more with people who are mid-career, think of it as maybe you need to take 2 to 3 small steps instead of one giant leap. And when you talk that way, it's much more manageable. It's much less overwhelming to say, okay, well, you have been a process analyst in financial services and you want to become a product owner in retail. What are the 2 to 3 steps that you could take, and look at every job for how it will get you there, so that in 4 years, 5 years, you can look back and say, I did it, but you may not make the one big leap. So it's a good thing to remember. What would each of you, I guess, what are some of the things then you look for, like in a new college grad? Because it sounds like we're talking a lot more about characteristics and traits and necessarily where have you done this exact thing?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing I look for is eye contact. First thing, I want to know if somebody can show up and be a professional and be confident in their own self, their own skills, regardless of what those are. I think you have to be really self-aware and just own who you are. You don't have a lot of experience when you're just coming out of school, and nobody expects you to have a lot of experience. So being able to show up and just be proud of who you are is the first thing I look for. The second thing I look for is your ability to learn and to adapt. So you've got knowledge that you got out of your classes, and you've got some work experience that you've had with internships or jobs where you had in high school or college, or maybe you've got a year out of college and you have some job experience there. How are you able to put that together? And I've heard both Molly and Veronica today use the phrase connect the dots, and we use that a lot at Keyot, of when you can take the knowledge that you've built and the experience you've had and turn it into wisdom that you can use moving forward. That's when you truly grow into your professional capability.
Veronica, thoughts that you have, because I bet you have a lot of friends that are at this point in their career. They did their first job out of college and they may realize, oh, that's not what I want to do anymore.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot at this age. Being a few years out, there's a lot of career changes going on. People who maybe thought they were going to go to law school and they realized that they hate documentation and reading and they just don't want to go through that. So I would, building off of what Laura said, your ability to learn is something I think is very important, but also your affinity to learn. Are you, if there's a job description, maybe, for example, if you're a business analyst and you think maybe you want to go into the world of business analysis, there's such a wealth of free resources, free knowledge out on the internet. Go learn as much as you can about that role. What does it mean? What does agility mean? What are organizations doing? Because that shows you, maybe you've never been a business analyst in an agile organization. However, if you can go out, learn, that shows hiring managers that you're committed to ramping up quickly and that you're invested. When I first learned about recruiting, I had an interesting view of recruiters. I truly didn't, I kind of had a little bit of a sour taste of what recruiting was. And it wasn't until I met with Angie Keyot, the president of Keyot, and also our director of recruiting, Janine, to really understand, this is what recruiting is. This is what a recruiter does. And I went out and learned as much as I possibly could. And that really helped me realize, this is what I want to do. So I would say the ability to learn and then that affinity is very important, because you're not going to have all the requirements on a job description. But if you can demonstrate that you can ramp up quickly, I think it's super valuable.
And one thing I know when we were preparing for this event that came up, so it's more a comment necessarily than another question, but we talked a lot about wanting to convey this idea of empowerment and giving people the courage and the confidence to make a change. Recognize it is hard. It is scary to think you might not use that college degree anymore, that you're still paying student loans on. And to really empower yourself and start somewhere, start small, but start somewhere to explore, is this passion of mine something I want to make into a career? So that's definitely something I think that our panelists today, with all three of us, would say we want you to take away today. Like, you can do this.
I think a real way to some specific things that you can do. And Veronica, you were fantastic at this. You did it when I first met you. You researched me and you looked at my LinkedIn profile and you dug into the companies that I'd been at, and you asked me 3 or 4 questions. Very specifically, they weren't surface level questions. It was, how did you move from a business analyst to a director of operations for this company? And the 2 things that you did out of there that was impressive, and I encourage everybody to do this when you have an interview or a meeting with a colleague, or maybe it's an interview, is ask those questions that show that individual that you researched, you learned, you used your judgment to come up with good questions that you're seeking to understand. And with the conversation I had with Veronica in the very beginning, it took me about 3 minutes, and all of a sudden I realized I'm doing all the talking, and I'm talking about myself and my company, and I'm selling how excited I am. And all of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, this is supposed to be an interview, and you've got me talking about me. And I love that, because immediately I'm like, you should be a recruiter, because you just took this whole interview away from me and you've got me answering questions. So now I can only imagine what you can do with other candidates in my company. This is fantastic. I think being able to express that when you're having a conversation with a business colleague or a new boss or an interview just helps that person connect the dots on you as to what your capability is.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Veronica, that does not surprise me at all that you would have turned that interview around on Laura. Well done. Oh, goodness. I would really love, Laura and Veronica, if you're ready, to start opening it up to Q&A, because I think we're getting some great questions that I see coming into Carly. So for those of you who joined later and didn't hear it the next half, and if we need to go, a little bit later past 12:30, we save time to do that. We want you to send your questions into Keyot's Carly Johnson, who's our posted and the Zoom call. She'll be fielding those questions, anything that you want to ask all the panelists, one of the panelists, to get your questions answered and get the tips that you're looking for to walk away from. So I have a few. Keep on sending them in though. We'll get to all of them. So the first one I have, I think it's what a lot of people are thinking about right now if you are a new or upcoming college grad, which is what do you have advice for recent college grads or upcoming college grads given the pandemic job market?
It's a great question, and I wish I'd been through a pandemic before so I could give you all of my brilliant advice, but I'm not that old. I would say you look at the pandemic in the eyes of any other significant event that's happened. And I've been through the 9/11 when that happened to our trade towers and in New York. I've been through floods in the Midwest that caused us to completely change the way we work. And I think the pandemic is the same way. It's caused us as a community and an industry to figure out how to work differently and how to serve our customers differently and how to work with each other differently. And it's an opportunity for us to show our adaptability and our ability to stay focused on what we were hired to do. And so I think when you're out in your job hunting in this pandemic, it's so important for me as a leader to look at people that want to join my team in terms of how can you help me get better? How can you help my company do their work in this really strange environment that we haven't been through either? We're taking the experiences we had in natural disasters and through 9/11, we're taking that information and making decisions about how to move forward. So I think when you can talk about your adaptability and that you'll come in and help wherever you're needed. So you're flexible and you're willing to put your knowledge and your experience and your skills to work. That's what's attractive to me because I don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the next month. I know what we planned, but I also know that the best laid plans and our ability to figure out, okay, well, that's what we thought we were going to do, but that didn't happen. So now we're going to move and we're going to go here and have a team that is standing beside me all saying, hey, you point the direction, I'm with you the whole way. Let's go. That flexibility and adaptability and willing to literally pick up the baton and run and support your team members. Those are the examples that I would encourage you to share as you're looking for that next role.
Yep. And Veronica, do you have you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think, it's a challenge what we're facing right now, and there simply aren't always going to be a plethora of opportunities. So it might just take time to be patient. But while you're waiting, maybe you have to take a job that, a year ago, you didn't foresee yourself being a college grad and, working retail or working in the service industry. However, use that as an opportunity to upskill. While you're waiting for that perfect role, enroll in a course that aligns with the job that you do want. It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, continuous knowledge, continuous learning. You'll be able to share that as opposed when the interviews and those opportunities do come around. Find something you're passionate about and become a subject matter expert if you can. There's so much information and so much learning out there that's free and accessible. So I would say use it as an opportunity to be patient, but upskill in something.
Yeah, I love that. Whether you're a college grad right now or not, there are a few things I tell everyone right now is, one, give yourself some grace. The plans you had for yourself, boy, does that seem like a mountain right now to climb. So you're going to have to adjust your expectations and maybe adjust them again. But just that patience, you will get there. It's just now going to take you maybe a little longer than you expected, and that's okay. I love that idea, Veronica, of upskilling. Or we've talked with people I know who've picked up a new hobby, and it's amazing the things people have gone and done. And I tell people, think of what you want your story to be in 6 months or in a year. So for example, if someone's pivoting their career, There's person A who says, I am a business analyst today and I want to become a data analyst or a project manager. Okay, that's one person. You know what you want to do next. Then there's person B who says, I'm a business analyst today and I want to become a project manager. And I signed up for this course and I've been networking with these people and I learned MS Project. See the difference in those two stories? You're demonstrating what you have done that's within your control to get you to that next stage. Okay. Let's keep moving on some of these questions, and feel free, Veronica and Laura, just to kind of stop me if you have other thoughts on it. For those of some of our participants who are out there who are finishing college or pursuing tech jobs, maybe they're early in that career, and COVID has really kind of put the brakes on that, where internships have gone away. So they were really, expecting to get that hands-on experience from an internship, which would then convey how they are qualified for this first job out of college. Now those internships don't exist. Do you have any ideas or suggestions for what they could do in that regard to get that experience?
Yeah, my own niece had this issue. She had when COVID hit, had a internship with Deloitte that changed because of COVID. And one of the things that we encouraged her to do was to contact her leader of the internship program and say, I'm home, I plan to work for you. I understand the internship isn't there anymore. What can I do to help? You don't have to pay me. I'm living here in my mom's basement. Is there something I can do to help? And what's happened out of a lot of those conversations is there's some companies that in the beginning felt that an internship wouldn't be valuable for someone coming out of school if they weren't there in person. And I think what we've learned, and most companies have learned, is that's not necessarily true. We can do a lot in a virtual environment. So the first thing I would say is I'd encourage you to contact any of the internship and find out if there are some things that you can do so that you can gain some experience. And the second thing I would do is network with everyone you know in your community to find out what other opportunities are there, whether they're paid or volunteer, because that work experience is really important and it gives you a chance to use some of the knowledge that you've gained through your education. Veronica, do you have anything to add?
I would just say, obviously what we're facing right now is we haven't gone through this in the past, but even when we're talking with candidates today who have a gap in their resume, or they took a couple of years off to be a mom, people do, I wouldn't consider your time off as a bad thing, but just like what Laura was saying, some of these women who took some time off to be a mom, they were volunteering, they were networking. Again, they were upskilling and looking for more information, more knowledge that they could use in conversation for future interviews. So just look at all the opportunities, volunteer, network. Those are just the lowest hanging fruit, I would say, that's going to move the needle for you.
Veronica, to add to that, back in 2007 when we had a financial crisis, and a lot of people were out of work, and people there were losing homes. It was a terrible time to be in the professional work world. And then coming out of that in 2010 and 2011, and I would interview people that were even my age or a little bit younger than I am, and I'd look at their career and I'd say, tell me about your career journey. And they had a great career going, they lost their job, and they went to work in retail or in a restaurant or whatever. And I'd ask, tell me about this. And some people would talk about it, almost as if they were ashamed that their career journey took that turn. And other people would say, was through the financial crisis, and I have a family and a mortgage, and so I got a job. And I worked in this, and it was interesting. And I learned a lot about people and myself while I was a server in a restaurant. It's what I had to do. And now we're back. The economy's different. The marketplace is different. Now I'm ready to go back to my career. And as a hiring person, I have so much respect for people who do do what is necessary in their life and their career and their obligations. And so don't feel like if there's a temporary pivot you have to make because we're in the middle of a pandemic that somebody's going to feel poorly about that. And if they do, you don't want to work for them anyway.
Yeah, and I often, that's interesting you say that, Laura. I'm thinking of that same group who had a job gap because of the mortgage recession. And so you'd only see on their resume the job that they had through a certain year and say it would be 12 months since that period. Well, I would always ask them, well, what have you been doing in this time? And it was amazing to me the number of people who were doing something. They were, implementing a kind of like an ERP system for their church. They were volunteering at school. They were the treasurer for the PTA. They were, had this side hustle that they were doing, but because it wasn't traditional employment, or maybe it was unpaid work, they didn't think they could put it on their resume. So I always talk to people that work experience is relevant work experience or related work experience. It doesn't matter if it's paid or unpaid. It should go in there to speak to what you were doing. Did you do training and coursework and things like that? That's amazing. Let's put that in there and tell that story. Yeah. So sometimes just giving people permission to break what they've traditionally thought of what goes and does not go in the resume. Good. Okay. I have a great question here about what advice would you give for someone who's unsure what their passion or purpose in life is? How do you even go about finding that out?
Veronica, do you want to start?
Sure. I don't know if any of you know who Mel Robbins is, but I love her. I adore her. She's got a great book called The 5-Second Rule. And she gives a great answer to this. And she says, if you're stuck or if you're in a job that you're just not super thrilled about and you're, looking at the clock, pay attention. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but really pay attention to what gives you energy. When I was in a role that I wasn't super thrilled about, I started being a data analytics person. I started taking some of my own personal data and writing down what parts of my day were really exciting. And I found that my conversations with stakeholders, when I was face to face with them, speaking with them, so I knew communication was really exciting to me. It gave me some energy. So I would start doing that self-assessment with whether it be you get really excited organizing your day, or maybe you get really excited, having phone conversations, whatever it is. It might just be something you do just to pass the time and you don't realize that it's something that you're really, really good at. Start paying attention to those. And that's just the first step to a place to start. And then, as we always say, connect the dots. Start to say, okay, I'm a really good communicator. I really love talking with people. I really love organizing. Maybe could I be a project coordinator? So starting to connect the dots between what you're really good at, paying attention to what gives you energy, and what potential options there are out in the market. That's just an easy way to start. And we actually are going to give a little handout after this call it's just a simple document for you to kind of assess where you're at, what you really like, what have you done in the past that's really exciting, what do you hate doing and you would never want to do in a million years, just to give you a foundation to build upon so that you can actively see what is that next step for me.
Yeah. And I think of it as the conversation you'd have with a close friend or a significant other when you talk about your workday, what you loved and what you didn't love. That's what this tool is, I think, that Veronica's talking about, and kind of the method or approach is really starting to eliminate things and then hopefully add things as well. I remember, there's all sorts of assessments. I remember in college I took one. It told me that I'd be a really great gardener. I am not a good gardener. My husband is a phenomenal gardener. I always say I do kids. I do not do pets very well. I do that better, but plants are not my thing. So, you kind of have to trust your gut. If it doesn't make sense, that did not make sense to me. So I did not go down that path. So Laura, do you have anything to add to that?
I think the tool we're going to send out is something that's one of my favorites. It's a grid with 4 quadrants. And the top left quadrant is you list everything that you're good at that you like to do. So what are things that I really like to do and I'm really good at it? And the quadrant to the right is what do I like to do, but I'm really not very good at it, but I like to do it. Those might be some opportunities to build some skills through learning. The bottom left quadrant are what am I good at, but I don't like to do it. And the far right bottom quadrant is what do I not like to do, and I'm not very good at it. Well, those you should be able to cross off right away and not choose a job in that particular field. But if you can focus on the other three and start to look at different careers or different job descriptions with those three qualities, that's one thing. And then take that knowledge out and go talk to 10 people that know you really well and ask them, what do you think I should do? Or what do you think I'm really good at? And that's a lot of where my career came from, was from somebody sitting down and saying, I really think you should try this. I think you'd be fantastic. That wasn't in what I ever perceived myself doing. It never had even occurred to me. And yet it led to a fantastic career in analysis.
You've said that a couple of times now, Laura, and it got me thinking. I had that too throughout my career several times. I was very lucky. I had a lot of great leaders that I've worked for over the years. But there was this point in my career where I took more control over it and said, this is what I want to do, or this is what I recognize I'm good at. I don't think early in my career I had the EQ or awareness to really articulate what I was good at. And that's where those people helped me.
Yeah.
But it was super empowering when I got to that point in my career where I could articulate for myself. And that's really what's led me to work I love.
I think that self-awareness comes with wisdom and just time on earth.
Right.
In the beginning of our career, the people that know us and love us are the ones that really can see our capability, that sometimes our own self-image, sometimes we can be our own worst enemy.
Right.
Where we don't recognize that we can be good at something because it's just not how we perceived ourselves. But that's when you want to rely on the people that love you. And then you do hit a point, and I agree, Molly. It's a great there's a great point in your career. It hit me when I was probably in my mid-30s, where all of a sudden I realized, you know what, I'm really good at these three things, and I'm super confident. You can throw me into any situation, and I can do that, one of those three things. And I started to identify, here's two more things I want to learn, and I started to focus my career journey on those.
A question that there's some great questions coming in. So I know that we're probably going to go past 12:30. I just want to give a heads up to people. I'll kind of make a pause at 12:30 and give you a little wrap up, but I do think for people who can stay on, the panelists will stay on as well. So one question is, what kind of questions should you be asking in an informational interview so that you get out of it a better understanding of how this could help you make that career pivot? Veronica, you've done a lot of this type of work, so maybe you could get us started.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think when it comes to informational interviews, it's very important. The other person is sharing their time, and their time is very valuable. I always approached mine in a kind of a casual way, saying, hey, I have always wanted to know, what does it mean to be a project manager? I would love to learn, coming from a place of true curiosity, as opposed to, I'm thinking about being a project manager, tell me everything you have. And you don't want it to seem like you're asking for them simply to reap some knowledge from them. You want it to be conversational and coming from a place that you are an expert in this area. I truly want to know what you do. Tell me what your day-to-day looks like. Tell me what you love about your job. Tell me what you wish you would have known before you became a project manager. Tell me some of the highlights, the lowlights, what's been the most challenging. All of those, I would say, kind of non-traditional, nuanced questions really help you form an understanding of, okay, maybe I don't want to be a project manager, or I think it's just those different things. And it's, like I said earlier, it's amazing. If you show that genuine curiosity, and the deeper you dig, the more information they'll usually be willing to share with you, and that is so invaluable.
Do you have a tip, Veronica, for people who maybe haven't done a lot of that networking? Just what do you even say in a reach out message to someone? How do you put yourself out there and say, are you open to coffee? Now we don't have coffee together, but that was easy to do it that way. Do you have some tips for what you should say or how you should approach inviting someone to a networking conversation?
Yeah, and I think today it's almost even a little easier to get people to say yes because they don't have to drive to a coffee shop, or they don't, they can be in the comfort of their own home, and kind of makes things a little bit easier. And yeah, sending out messages can be definitely intimidating. I would always just keep it brief, share, hi, I'm Veronica. I'm a junior at the Carlson School. I would love to learn a little bit more about what you do at General Mills or whatever company you work for. I see that you've been a project manager for 20 years, and do a little research on them, show that you actually know what they do, and just ask them, what, I'd love to connect with you to learn about why you became a project manager, to see if that's in alignment with my future goals. Won't take more than 30 minutes of your time. If you'd be so kind to share be generous with your time and your wisdom. And so many people are so willing to give back to, especially young adults who are looking to start out their career path.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all those are great tips. I love how you even put in kind of like a time. So they know this is going to be 30 minutes. It's not going to be an hour. Everyone's on a lot of Zoom calls these days. So I love that you do that. And I think it's really important you state your objective, why you reached out to network with them and what you're hoping to get out of it. So I would just add to that then too, for the actual interview, just come prepared. Treat it like a school research project, or if you're in a current role, task that you would have at work, come prepared with questions so it shows that you're ready and you're taking the conversation seriously. Laura, anything else to add to that?
Yes, the only thing I would add is one of the most important assets that you have already started building, whether you realize it or not, is your network. And that will become more and more important the further you go in your career. So don't downplay who you know. And it might be a friend of your mom's, or a friend of your dad's, or your uncle's colleague, or something. That is gold in terms of your network. And if you can have what we in the business world will call a soft intro. So we have somebody who knows us really well introduced us to somebody we don't. If somebody were to send me a message and say, would you mind meeting with my nephew who's very interested in XYZ? He's extremely bright. I think these are the reasons why I think he'd be good in this career. Could you spare a half hour? I will do that because I have respect for my colleague, and I personally love to mentor, and most people do. Most people want to help others grow. So I would just say, don't discount your network that you have in place, and then continue to build that network for the whole of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question that came in just asking, are there a document we could share with some questions that we recommend asking in an informational interview? Veronica, I think you and I could probably put that together and we could share that. So let me just pause here for those of you who may have to drop. I know we're right at the hour mark. So just some things to look for. First of all, our next event will be in October. So be looking on our social media, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn to learn when we'll do that next. In the coming days, you'll get a survey, and it's so helpful if you can take a few minutes to fill that out. Just tell us what you liked and didn't like from this conversation. It just helps us understand if we're bringing content that is valuable to you, and how we can better help all of you. We are still doing virtual career fairs, so also follow us on social media to get the dates of those coming up. I know our Crew 212 recruiting team is just working at a feverish pace to get to all those, but it sounds like they've been some amazing interactions, and talk about Pivot and all the learnings that have come from both candidates as well as from employers to make that happen. So if you have to go, and with that survey, we'll also be sharing that career passion planning tool that Laura and Veronica talked about, and we'll put the questions for informational interviews in there. Okay. So for those of you who can stay on, I want to keep going. We have so many good questions I want to get to here. One that I know we talked about ahead of time was, how do you convince a hiring manager to hire you when you don't check all the boxes? Because there is a lot of competition out there right now. And when you're especially in entry level, but even if you're mid-career, you know, sometimes you're getting declined because you have 9 out of 10, but you don't have 10 out of 10 skills. So are there some ways that you can recommend or help people, give some tips there?
Absolutely. I think what will push a candidate over the edge for me is when I see the emotional maturity or the ability to work with a team or to collaborate. And if you focus on those particular talents that you have, that will help. That would push you over as a candidate for me against somebody that was maybe even a little bit more skilled but lacked the emotional intelligence and learning ability. So the two things you can do in an interview is give some examples of coming into a position where you didn't have all the skills, or you didn't have it, and how you learned it and how you conquered that role. Almost always your personality and your ability to meld with a team and to learn will be more important, with maybe the exception of going into a job where maybe they require Java or SQL and you don't have those skills. Then I would encourage you to go out and pursue those skills.
Yeah, well, find those. Yeah, Veronica, do you have any additional?
Yeah, Laura
Tips and
covered a
advice?
lot of what I was going to say. But yeah, speak as if, say, I recognize that, I'm a little bit not as seasoned in my SQL skills. However, if I were to be in this position, here's what I would do, and here's how I would fill that gap, and be able to provide examples. And if you can speak to that, many hiring managers will take that, commitment to ramping up quickly and that grit over maybe a little bit of a skill gap in a certain area. If you do know, if you're in a highly technical space, it's a little bit more challenging to acquire a role that expects you to have significant knowledge on that tool day one. So I think it's, if they require 10 years of SQL and you've never even opened up SQL Server before, then you're likely not, likely not going to be a job that you're going to be a fit for. But like Laura said, if that's on your roadmap for a job that you want to maybe 2-3 years down the line, get an expertise in that skill set today. Take the classes, do the training that you can.
And don't forget the wealth of experience you get from, say, school projects, for example, or home projects. How do you tackle a home improvement project? How, when you volunteer, are you the person who steps up and takes on the leadership role? Just think of life experiences you have that you can put in there instead. I think that that's really important. I know one of the questions that came through was on this topic, and it was talking about they've applied to so many entry-level positions and they're getting rejected for being underqualified. Do you think that's a time when these other things we're talking about, like networking, could help that person?
Yeah,
and maybe
absolutely.
You could talk about how.
When you can have somebody in your network walk a resume into a company or into a department and say, this is what I like about this individual. If you are applying for a particular job, tailor your resume to that particular job.
Yeah.
And be very deliberate. And if there are 7 bullets on the job description, make sure you answer all of those 7 bullets. Make it easy for that person to understand why you're a fit for that role. And then I'll tell you, my favorite question to ask when I interview is, tell me what you know about my company. And if I get a blank stare, or I haven't had time to look, or They don't know my mission. They don't know what's on the front page of my website. They didn't look me up. I'm done. I will say, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I always look at that opportunity to present yourself kind of like dating.
Yep.
That you're going to put your best foot forward on that first. And if that's all I'm going to get on that first date, then I can imagine how it's just going to go downhill from there. So just think about that. Make it easy for me to understand why you're a good fit for this role, and then come prepared to wow me with how prepared you are.
I can't emphasize enough, Laura, how important that tailored resume is right now. So often that's the first look that the first person involved in the hiring decision, so not the hiring manager, but probably a recruiter like Veronica or I, are reviewing. And it is so important that if the job requires 5 years of SQL, that you call out that you have 5 years of SQL, that you go through all of those things and really demonstrate that. Use that professional summary. Don't have an objective. Everybody's objective is to get the next job. So instead have a professional summary that speaks to very specifically who you are and how you hit on each of those things. That's so important. And then I want to, Veronica, before I turn it over to you, I want to just touch on one more thing. When you are getting rejected, whether it be you're getting declined, your application's getting declined, your resume, or you're interviewing and you're not getting the job, be courageous and have the courage to ask that recruiter or that hiring manager for feedback, because that's the only way you will keep your sanity in a market like this while you're a job seeker, because it will help you understand, was there something you did in the interview with Laura where Laura tells you, you didn't take any time to research who Keyot is, and that's really important to me. Okay, that's something you have control over and you can fix for next time. Or was it, we had to hire this internal person? You were one of 3 top candidates, but the other one had this extra thing. Okay, that maybe is a skill you want to go get, but in this moment, was it in your control? Probably not. And then build on that feedback. So have the courage to ask for feedback. Veronica, were there any other things?
I was just going to mention that I know it's frustrating if you are applying to tons of jobs and you're getting no feedback or just a general decline email. That's very frustrating. And I saw someone's blog post on LinkedIn about this, about, hiring managers don't care, and just kind of a little bit of a negative piece. And someone commented that right now there's not as many opportunities as there are applicants. And so there's so much information out there that sometimes hiring managers simply can't get through all of those applicants. So to Molly's point earlier, it's almost necessary that you find a back door, a side door, a window to climb into, something, a weak tie even at an organization, because the strength of weak ties is a very real thing. You might underestimate that person that sat across from you in your data analysis class, but if they're working at a company that you really would like to be at, reach out to them and share the knowledge that Molly just shared, what you're looking for, what you're looking to get into, why you'd be a good fit. But it's almost very necessary to get your name in front of the hiring manager multiple times, as opposed to just a simple application.
So Molly, when you post a job, like for a project manager, how many hundreds of resumes do you get back?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're getting hundreds of applicants for a single opening. And it's interesting, just today, I was talking with someone who was having a conversation with a corporate recruiter, and they feel the same. They feel like, I'm so frustrated. I feel terrible that there are all these applicants and we can't get to all of them quick enough or at all because there's so many. And oh, by the way, you always wonder, did I get to the right one? Or do we stop after 50 resumes? How many do we look at? And everyone is struggling with that. So that's where somehow you have to get your name in front of them. And that network would help. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a incredible number. And every person who's getting hired right now, I think, should be celebrated, for what a story they'll have to tell, that they got a job during the COVID pandemic job market. So, yeah.
Well, and we're starting to see all of our clients are starting to hire again. There was a period of 3 or 4 months where everybody took a break to try to determine how do we move forward and what's going to happen. It's kind of the assessment before they move. But we're starting to see everyone open back up. And the best part about knowing if we're in a recessionary-like period is that it will end. And after will always end with a period of intense growth. So even though your journey may be taking a little bit longer than you planned, have absolute confidence that it will take off. And all of this work that you do now to build that network and to meet as many people as you can will all be assets that you'll get to use down the road across the course of your career.
Such a great reminder. It sometimes feels like it will never end, but that is such a mantra to keep saying to yourself, like, this will end. This is temporary. And what can you do in the temporary time period? So, yeah, good. There were a few questions. There was a question related to other resume tips. Was there anything there? And let's try to keep it in context of this idea of pivoting and changing your career. Veronica or Laura, that you think are other good things to highlight when you're trying to make this change?
One of the things I like to read on a resume is, in terms of the positions that you've had in the past, is, especially if you're looking for something in project delivery, is I call it projectizing your resume, of looking at the work that you've done through the eyes of a project manager. And I led this effort to, maybe it was a volunteer effort, or maybe it was something you did in school, but you served as a project-like individual. And so you write your resume in terms of, I did this in the role of a project manager. Here was the scope of the work that I managed, and here was the outcome. Because even if it wasn't leading a technology effort, it still shows me, as the person reading the resume, that you saw it as a scope of work, you had specific jobs within that scope of work, and you understood the outcome, and that it had a start and a stop. And that helps me absorb some of the information. It also helps me build interview questions that I want to talk to you about when we get together.
Veronica?
Yeah, I was going to say exactly. I love the projectizing. I love when resumes look like that. Recruiters, hiring managers, people in general love stories and context. And when you can give the eyes of the person reading your resume that without meeting them, it enhances your chance of having a great conversation or making them want to speak with you.
I always say that a resume is valuable real estate. So whatever space you're going to spend on it, spend it wisely. So think about, are you taking, how much time are you taking to explain something? And is that really valuable information you're sharing? I like to see definitely that project delivery focused resume, but also I like to understand the bigger why. Why was this important? Was this process improvement and it saved a lot of money? Was this compliance or regulatory work? Was this developing a new product? Was it driving customer experience? What was it doing? Why was this important at that time? And that's a great story to tell as well. And I'd also encourage you, this is again down, we won't go too far down this path of what not to do, but one thing is really look at it critically. Are you saying and using a lot of the language like, I'm results oriented, I'm a team builder, I'm collaborative, instead of using those words that everybody else uses and so managers gloss over that? Instead, look for how can you convey that? How can you demonstrate that you are take initiative on your own, or that you are results oriented? Do you have a goal in there, and did you reach that goal, and did you reach it 80% or 95% or 100%? So those would be other things on there too. Okay, thank you. And we're just kind of on that topic of resumes. I thought we might as well cover it all. A question came in about, we're talking about career paths and trajectories towards what you do want to do, but Laura and Veronica, can you both speak to a time that you were in a position where you realized this wasn't what you wanted to do? And how did you kind of get out of that to start to move into something different? And why? What was it about that job that made you decide to go a different direction?
Yeah, I can. When I mentioned I went back to school and to get a technology degree, while I was getting that degree, and I was working for an insurance company, and I wanted the focus to be on my education, so I accepted a job at this insurance company that was in their claims examining department. And the work of a claims examiner is getting a health insurance claim in, entering certain data into a system, a portal. It had some compliance checks, and then ultimately that's what helped the insurance claim get processed. What I learned about that job, it was something I did by myself, 7.5 hours a day with minimal breaks, processing each one of these claims. And so what it taught me really quickly is that I don't thrive in environments where I'm not talking to people, where I'm not interacting with people, even though I could see the men and women working next to me who were exceptional at doing this process work and who loved the fact that they were working on their own and that they were individual contributors and that they didn't like the interaction with people as much as I did. And it was a really important piece of learning. Once I acknowledged that it was work I didn't want to do long term, but I knew that it was a good role that didn't tax me while I was focusing on my education. And so for me, I time boxed it. And I said, okay, this is what I have to do for 18 months until I finish my degree. And then I'm going to go look, and I've learned an important piece that don't put me in a job where I don't interact with people. So that's going to help me define what kind of positions I go after. So for me, having a time box it's kind of like going to the dentist, which I hate. I am the biggest baby about going to the dentist. But when I go in, I always think, okay, 1 hour from now, you're done. You're done, and you don't have to go back for 6 months. So, think about, I'm going to put the end in my mind, and then I'm going to work towards it. Once I called it out, I time box it, I can manage through it. So that's what I would encourage you to do.
I love that idea, Laura. I think there's so much in life that if you did that, and you give great examples, but the things you hate to do, I don't know, dusting in the house or whatever, if you just say, okay, we're going to do this for 20 minutes and be done with it. And I love that idea. I feel like it puts it more in control for you then.
Yeah, it really does. There's a great book called Grit. And it is about, the book is really about, sometimes in life, you just have to get it done. And there's certain things that we have to do in life in order to accomplish what we want to do. And sometimes that just takes grit and perseverance. And if you can draw a box around it, sometimes that makes it easier.
So true. So true. Veronica, how about for you? Can you think back to positions you've held, or maybe even throughout through college, where you thought, oh gosh, I know I don't want to be here anymore?
Yeah, I don't have anything too crazy to add to what Laura was saying. I think it's just noting that nothing lasts forever. Every job is not going to be your dream job, and it shouldn't be, because then, you're working towards getting there, especially out of college. There's going to be elements of your job that you don't like. And that's okay, that's good. But approaching it in a similar way that you said, Molly, just without so much negative energy, like, oh, I hate doing this. Kind of use it as something that, okay, I know I have to do this job it's a prerequisite to my next job in a year, and I'm going to do what I can and approach this as if I love this. You may not, it may not be in alignment with what you want to do long term, but it comes back to just getting it done and knowing it's a stepping stone. It's like a lot of doctors and lawyers, and they don't like school, but they know they want to be a surgeon one day. They've got to have a lot of grit for that 12 to 16 years of schooling before they can actually do the job they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I can think back to two really pivotal points throughout my career. The first one happened in my first semester of grad school, where I realized, well, I definitely don't want to be in academics, but I have 2 years here, so I have to make good use of my time. And I sought out work that did align to my passion. So I still did my regular job of being a grad student, and I love teaching, but I created work for myself that I love to do. So in this case, I supported our head of that ran the Study Abroad summer program in Ireland, and I did his marketing and rebranding campaign. I had a friend who did graphic design, and we did it for free. He didn't have any money, and it was terrible. So I made that into something that I could add into my portfolio for marketing and advertising. The second thing I can think back to is when I thought I wanted to do something and it turns out I didn't, which is when I got into doing more HR and less recruiting. And that for me was really pivotal because it sucked the life out of me to not, kind of, Laura, how you talk about not having people interaction, when I not only couldn't connect with candidates, and I was doing less interviewing, and I was just doing all this heads down research and report writing and analysis. It really drained me too. And so I was very intentional there. Still did my work well, but I like grabbed the reins, and I was patient because I didn't want to misstep into something else I didn't want to do. But I think just naming it and saying, I don't want to do this, this isn't my passion, helped me focus on the right jobs, and eventually led me to where I am today. So
Yeah,
good.
I got some really great advice early on in my career, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that the way that you respond to the jobs that you don't love and the way that you respond to the jobs that you do love will earn you opportunities to do more of the second. If you're in a job you don't love and everybody that sits around you knows you don't love it, and you don't perform at your best and you only give it half, you're not going to get tapped for those next jobs. And whether that's through a reference or whether it's through an opportunity in the company that you're in now, recognize that it's, we're always on, somebody's always watching how we perform. And it's so important, because what we really want is those jobs or assignments or engagements where we get to put all of our skills to work in the areas that we love, that we're super rewarded on, but we have to do the hard work before in order to get there. And you're not always going to love what you do, but if you can do it well, and you can think about that lifeline exercise that I spoke about earlier, and you can think, I'm in a job I don't love, what am I going to learn out of this? What story am I going to tell 2 years from now when I'm out of it? What did I learn in this role? And maybe it's all about the insurance industry, or maybe it's understanding how claims are processed, and why is this important, and how does that impact the Affordable Care Act, and how am I going to learn and challenge myself to learn something out of that particular engagement that will just build your capability, your skills, and your attractiveness as a candidate.
I think that's such a good thing to hear you say, Laura, because that's so true. I think commonly for people who take entry-level jobs, especially into larger companies, it is a point of entry, and it may not be the work you love to do right now, but someone is always watching, and they may, how many times do we talk with people who say, I got from here to here because someone was working with me and they recognized I was good at this, so they pulled me over here, and 3 jobs later, now I do love what I do. Yeah, and you have such opportunity once you get your foot in the door of so many of these companies. So that's a really good reminder. Yeah.
Well, just imagine how many times you've walked in an elevator or up an escalator or on a sidewalk or sitting in a bar or whatever, and you hear a conversation behind you that clearly somebody's unhappy, or they're complaining, or they don't love what they do. Now put yourself in and now all of a sudden you're the hiring manager. And you're the person responsible, and you think about what you're hearing. It's really important. You will start to make decisions when you're in those positions of responsibility based on what you hear around you. So use that professional wisdom now to recognize when you are on a video call, or once we get back to being in our client environments, recognize that there's people that can hear you, and those people could have some really amazing impacts to your career. And recognize and take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, you never know. And especially the Twin Cities, for those of you who live here, it's a small town, and it's a really fun way to cross paths with people many times over in your career. So, well, I think that was a great question to wrap it up with. I just want to take a moment to do some thank yous. So first of all, thank you to all the participants. Majority of you stayed on well past the hour mark. And I know that everybody, whether you're in a job right now or you're looking for work, your days are valuable. And so thank you so much for sharing your time with us to listen to this conversation. Laura and Veronica, I want to thank both of you so much. You both added so much rich content to this conversation and unique perspectives and a lot of good things to think about and just remember. And sometimes it can be really overwhelming when you're looking for a job and then you have something as out of control as a pandemic to deal with. It can seem really overwhelming. So thank you both for your time today and sharing
Molly,
your.
thank you for the facilitation and for being our moderator. We appreciate you as well.
I enjoy this. Thank you. And Carly Johnson is behind the scenes, but everybody, anyone who knows Carly at Keyot, this event would not have happened without her. She really made sure that this was seamless. So thank you, Carly, so much. And we have a lot of other folks behind the scenes who've made the whole Keyot live series. So final things that we're going to leave with here. Be looking for that survey. Along with that, we will include the career planning or passion planning tool and some good questions you can ask if you are going to be doing some informational interviewing. We want to encourage you to follow Keyot on social media. We are incredibly active on Facebook, Instagram, and on LinkedIn. And that will include, we will be posting soon the topic for our October event. And finally, if you are a college grad or upcoming college grad, make sure to look for our Crew 212 Keyot team. Our Crew 212 program is our college hire program. It's amazing. So look for our recruiters who will be attending those virtual events. And that's it. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great day. I hope this was helpful. And please share feedback when that survey comes out for how we can get better. Have a great day. Thank you.